It's rough. It's hard to breathe. Food is low.
They used to tell
It's
me
really hard.
I was building a dream,
We have no money.
and so I followed them on.
My wife and I.
When there was earth to
Just
plow
farming.
or guns to
Farming for
bear,
another man.
I was
No.
always there, right on the job.
Kids have to wear masks because they can't breathe.
They used to tell me I was building a dream,
Let me show you.
with
As you can see,
glory ahead.
a lot of the crops are dead from the Sussball. Here we have. Here we have some dead crops.
Once I built a railroad,
Our stock, it failed. There's no food for the children. The man's not paying us.
I built a railroad.
It's been really hard. Behind me, the house of a very rich person.
Once I
I wish I
built a
could be like this. I used to be. Back when I had a job. Back right after World War I. But then I lost my job. Ever since that damn stock market crash in 1929. Life's been very difficult. All three of my sons are working. Even the 6-year-old. What kind of life is this? It's just depressing. Some may even call this the Great Depression sometime in 70 years. Who knows? It's just, it's just awful. Please, somebody help.
So hopefully from my video you could tell how life in the Great Depression kinda was, but a little bit more in depth, some of the things that I was trying to convey in that video. First of all, a really important thing to understand about the Great Depression was that people who were formerly employed lost their jobs, and this caused a sudden spike in the unemployment rate in the United States. However, there was still kind of an elite group, and because of this there was a widening social gap, as I tried to capture with the scene with the rich person's house. What tended to happen was that poorer people who lost their jobs maybe, would subsistently farm for richer people to help kind of the richer people boost their financial status, as well as to help their family survive. In addition to this, a lot of times kids, as I mentioned in one of the scenes, would have to work and be a source of income for the family. Now, we can tie this back to time periods such as the Lowell Mills in Lowell, Massachusetts, and connecting it in the sense that, you know, the girls had to go to the factories to be a source of income for the factory, for their, families. But even that was not to as high of a degree as during the Great Depression. Because during the Great Depression, everything was compounded, if you will, by the Dust Bowl, which really ruined agriculture in the western and southwestern United States, as well as caused health hazards, in addition to the implied environmental concerns. But because of all of these factors, life in the Great Depression was essentially a very awful and miserable place to live. And, you know, the crash of the stock market in 1929 led to high debts, and debts that people were unable to pay off, which, as I mentioned earlier, goes back to why they had to subsistently farm for these richer people. Lastly, it's really important to understand that causes of the Great Depression were not limited to government excessively spending, but that was a fairly large factor of the Great Depression, and it may not specifically have been a certain president's fault. However, it was the actions of the presidents of the later 20s, the later portion of the decade, that had a major contribution to the Great Depression, if that makes sense. So, thank you for watching my video. I hope it was entertaining and informative at the same time. yeah.